And I call the member for McKellar.
Mr Speaker, it is very good to see you this morning. On behalf of the Standing Committee on Tax, on behalf of the Committee on Tax and Revenue, I present the committee report entitled "The Development of the Australian Corporate Bond Market: A Way Forward," together with the minutes of proceedings.
And the member for McKellar may proceed.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Your generosity and kindness is renowned throughout the land. Mr Speaker, I know this will be the most important thing we do in this House today. Now, not that the glass up in level 2 will realise that, or the media will report it, or that this will lead on television news tonight. But the corporate bond market and the retail segment of it remains critical to the future of Australians, of Australian companies, of Australia's economy, and for those Australians who are at this moment considering retiring. The reason I say this is because when you look at the Australian economy, it has many fine qualities, but the one thing that it misses most of all is a degree of risk or venture capital. So you can borrow money to buy a car, you can borrow money to buy a house, indeed you can even delay payment on a pair of shoes or a dress these days. I'm not critical of any of those things, as I am in the care of a teenage daughter at the moment, and I realise how important they all are. But for us to grow our economy, we need our businesses to have access to risk capital in this country. Too many good ideas in our nation are funded by taxpayers through the university system, through R&D, grants and concessions in our tax system, and just as they are getting ready to become commercially viable and successful ventures, they leave our shores for the primary reason of seeking capital in other countries that have access to risk capital. So when you look at Atlassian, for example, it was funded generously by the Australian taxpayer. But when the point came that they were to become a successful commercial entity, they had to list on the NASDAQ in North America and then list on the London Stock Exchange. The reason for this is we don't have enough risk capital in Australia. The bond market, retail corporate bond market, can help fix that problem. It also, when you look at Australia, we have all the necessary blocks in place to be a major global centre for the bond market. We have a large pool of savings. We have a common law system of justice and governance through our court system that is both well understood and is not biased or discretionary. And most of all, we have a large number of skilled workers in this country and well-developed market systems, whether it be the Australian Stock Exchange or other type market mechanisms that make bond markets so successful in the rest of the world. And finally is the demographics. Too many Australians find themselves having to invest as they get to the age of 55 plus. I mean, that's really old, Mr Speaker, as you know. Once you reach 55, that becomes a very old age. And at that point, you start thinking of retirement. You start thinking of how to live out those twilight years of your life. And it is important at that point in time that you have access to investments that can continue to give you a steady stream of income, but do not have the downside of, let's say, Bitcoin or the Australian Stock Exchange. So it is important that we have these sort of assets available for those Australians who are about to commence or about to go into their retirement years. What are the blockages? Well, given that we are so well set up for these things, the blockage are all in the regulators. There is a form of tax that needs to be reformed by this parliament, but ASIC's active disinterest and discouragement in a retail corporate bond market, I think, verges on really a derogation of their duty. And Treasury's inability and refusal to look at this area also is extremely disappointing and a disservice to the Australian people. When you look across the ditch in New Zealand, they undertook the reforms that our report is advocating. New Zealand, a much smaller nation than ours, without the structural advantages that our economy has a larger, broader, deeper, more liquid bond market than Australia does. This is unacceptable at any level. Finally, the chance for us to make this work is long overdue. It gives new meaning to the word urgent. So I would like to thank the Secretariat for all their help and assistance on this, especially during COVID when all of the hearings were done online. I'd like to thank the member for Kingsford Smith who came up with the catchy title to this report, which I know will live on long after I've stopped speaking. And most of all, I would like to thank the Parliament for making this investigation possible. Thank you, Mr Speaker.